There was a certain piece of research that I came across that said that 71% of employees in this country rated themselves or said they were either disengaged or actively disengaged in the companies they worked in.
The culture before I got here was certainly very different. I don't think it was a culture that really listened and engaged people. And one of the things through the process with Jim is asking and listening to feedback and incorporating that feedback from all employees in the decisions that we make.
I've been in business 25 years. We were fortunate enough for first two hires. They understood the vision, the work ethic, but then we started to hire more people, and that's when things didn't go so well. He helped us define job descriptions, preferred requirements. Big for us is what Jim put together as a performance appraisal, which occurs quarterly.
What I felt was missing before Jim got here was a sense of cohesiveness. He met with the management team first and helped to decide what do our values mean to us. And we sat and went through every single employee and offered them the chance to give their input on what the values meant to them.
Our process at Rising Sun Consultants is to meet with the individuals in the company to determine what's happening, what's the problem, what's the pain. From there to develop a unique strategy or process of how we're going to address that they get to own.
To determine our cultural values, we let every employee talk about what are the values that should be a part of our culture, and then after we determine those 6 values, what are the things that define them.
And by Jim's ability to create this program that is so quantifiable, it really helps us navigate those situations. He has been a mentor whether he likes it or not. He just has been.
The process of going through the value creation and the culture creation with Jim has allowed our team to be unstoppable, and I really feel like we can attack any problem that's put in front of us.
Meetings are engaging. We have a lot of fun. In 2017, we placed number 20 on the Best Places to Work survey out of employers in Pennsylvania.
When you see those results, you can't help but to get excited. In a small way, as a company, as our mission, we get to impact the world around us and make better places for people to work and live.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see folks on a Friday afternoon. At least here in central Pennsylvania, a lot of storms coming through and thunderstorms and rain. So hopefully everybody's being safe with that. But it's good to have everyone joining us today. We're here this afternoon to talk briefly about this idea of dealing with high drama in the workplace, right? So I'm going to start off as usual with a quick question for you to start sending me comments, and so you can type. And the question is, what does high drama look like in your organization? When you think of that, what are the behaviors you see? What do people do that to you signifies high drama? So if you just take a couple minutes and you kind of type those thoughts in, and we'll start to wrestle with some of those. As you do that, the other thing is, remember the little hand there. You can click on the little hand if you want to speak. As usual, we probably won't be able to get to everybody, but if you want to say something, we can try to get to a couple folks to do that, and you just have to turn your microphone on, but feel free to do that. So as we kind of dive into this idea of dealing with high drama in the workplace, again, just share your comments around what high drama looks like for you. Let me give you a minute to do that. Looking for the comments. Perfect. There we go. Gossip. Yes. Complaining. Speaking off the cuff. Opinionated, loud spoken. How about call me? I have, let's see what else. Backstabbing. People who are never happy no matter what we do. Yeah. Yeah, great idea. How hard is it for work? Okay. Yep. Yeah, I find that a lot of these, when we have high drama in the workplace, as we kind of share in the description, it's this notion of the whiners, the complainers, the the ones that gossip, the tattletales, right? They're always looking for a problem, and if there's not one, they'll find one. They're looking for a reason to be upset, demeaning coworkers. There's one yet, bad attitude, keeping an eye on what everyone else is doing. There you go, right? They spend more time looking at what everyone else is doing than on what they're supposed to be doing. We look at folks that oftentimes entitlement fits into this bucket, right? They have certain what they believe to be rights or things they should just get because. One of the common themes with all of these folks that I find, and again, please, you can keep sharing your ideas. And again, if you want to say something, just hit the little hand there, and we're glad to get you involved that way. One of the things I find common between all of these behaviors is that more often than not, it's all of these same folks that like to stir up trouble. Ultimately, they're trying to get others agitated and involved. They're doing one of two things. And I'm curious if you find this to be true. They're either one, trying to agitate others and get other people worked up and be destructive that way, or they're trying to get other people on their side, trying to convince them. And a lot of these folks can be pretty convincing, right? They can be very persuasive. Sometimes they're charismatic, and they're trying to get people on their side. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But one of the things that will help us with this discussion is if you would all take a minute and just share this. How many of you in your organizations have a clear set of values that help shape your organization or how people are supposed to behave? How many of you have a clear set of values that help define how individuals are expected to behave in the organization? And if that's a yes, you can type yes or give some examples of what those look like. If it's a no, then just say no. If you've got some examples of the values, you can type those in too. I see somebody saying, yes, you have those. You do, okay. Someone said, Tanya, you said we did, which makes me wonder what happened to them. Walt, you said yes to both, okay. So when you think about those values, those of you that are saying yes, can you just type in, what are a couple quick examples of those values? Just kind of respond, what are some of those? Some of you know, yeah, that's fair. The 4 C's, compassion, collaboration, caring, and creative. Okay, excellent. Let's see if we get a couple of others, because the next question is going to be very interesting to see how you all respond to this. So we see those 4 C's. That's great. We're in the process of restructuring them. Okay, Tanya, I got you. Yep, integrity. Thanks, Walt. Think about this, and again, you can kind of respond to this. When you think about compassion, collaboration, caring, creative, integrity, someone else put dignity, respect, professionalism. We have a policy of kindness, right? But it's not followed. When we think of all those, I think any one of us would say, of course they make sense. You won't find, I don't think, an employee in your organization that if you said, hey, do you think respect's a good thing? They're going to say, well, of course it is. The problem is, though, and Kelly, you said it right there, but it's not being followed. The interesting thing is how many of you, so you put that caring or compassionate or creative, collaborative, respect, integrity, dignity, professionalism, accountability. I see one, teamwork. John, thank you. How many of you have ownership, empowerment? Excellent ones. How many of your organizations have those values defined in behavioral terms? So specific examples of what behaviors look like that reflect respect or reflect teamwork or caring or kindness, whatever the value is. How many of you have very specific behavioral examples that are agreed upon that demonstrate or represent what that value is? Quentin, thank you. You're working on those. Okay, excellent. Now, some of you may think that you may have like a one sentence statement after each value, and that's good. But what I'm really looking for, how many of you have specific behavioral, observable examples of what those values look like on a day-to-day basis? Not defined very well, Lauren. Yeah, thank you. Okay. And Quentin, you said they're working on them. Okay. Here's what I find to be more often the case, and as we kind of see you all continue with your comments, more often than not, most organizations don't have a set of values, or if they do, they're not very well defined. We'll come up with a nice acronym for them, right, that represents them, like the 4 C's, and that's really good. Making them memorable is important. One of the fundamental ways that we deal with this high drama issue is, do we have a clear understanding of our culture that we want? Unfortunately, I think a lot of the reason that these behaviors exist in our organizations is because we tolerate them. We don't know how to deal with them effectively, and a big part of that is because it's dealing in the world that's not quite as comfortable or measurable. If someone doesn't do their job, we can look at a job description. We can have a performance review, right? That we can look at things that are far more concrete. But when it comes to respect, it's really difficult to look at somebody and say, that's not respectful, when they say, well, I think it is. And then what do? Right? And as leaders and supervisors and managers, we get uncomfortable with that discussion. So a few things for you to think about today, and then you can continue sharing your thoughts. Quentin said we also do values-based shout-outs at every staff meeting. Yeah, we're going to come back to that in a second, Quentin, about what do we do with them once we have them, right? It's this idea, though, as I'm not sure we've clearly defined what we want our cultures to look like, so people truly know and understand what our expectations are around the values. Now, what I'd love to say is things like respect and kindness and compassion and caring and those types of things, values. I think there might have been a day we say, well, isn't that just common sense, Jim? That's what I would hear. And I've thought a lot about that, and my response is, boy, I would love it to be, but I think we've lost common sense. I think common sense might be gone. And boy, I don't like that thought, right? I actually had a person once, when I said that, tell me, well, Jim, it's not gone. It's just not common anymore. And I kind of had to stare. I'm like, did you hear that? Right? And I laughed, and then they got it. Well, okay. I think we've got a culture now that these values mean so many different things. And unfortunately, these behaviors of the high drama, the gossips, the tattletales, the whiners, the complainers, the grumblers, the pot stirrers, all these folks, the folks that feel entitled, it all stems from a core set of values and beliefs of what they think is okay and how to deal with life. And as organizations, have we empowered our leaders, managers, and supervisors to be able to say what's appropriate by clearly defining these through behaviors? The other part of it is, are we empowering our managers, leaders, and supervisors to say, you are the leaders, managers, and supervisors. And so if I look and say, hey, Jim, that's disrespectful. When you sit in a meeting and we say something, you go, I call it rolling your eyes and sucking your teeth, right? I can't stand that. That I can then come talk to you and say, Jim, when you do that, that's disrespectful. And when the individual responds with something like, and see if this rings true, responds with something like, well, no, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I was just frustrated. Then a lot of us were like, oh, well, now what do I do? And my simple response is going to be, because we know what respect looks like, I simply respond to Jim saying, I understand you were frustrated. It is still disrespectful. That's the bottom line. And it's unacceptable, and it needs to stop. So we have to work together to figure out, when you're frustrated, what are more appropriate ways to manage and handle that, so we don't do these behaviors that are frustrating, annoying, unproductive, not helpful, right? They just drive us nuts. We have to stop tolerating them. And one of the biggest strategies I know to do that is let's clearly define our culture. Now, let me come back to that, to this idea of your culture, right? Of these values and these behaviors. If respect is our value, what does respect look like on a daily basis? What are the things that I do that would lead you to say, Jim's a respectful guy? We need to list those out. Now, not all of us in our organizations have the authority, or we're not in a position where we get to set that for the whole organization. Can you do that with your team then? So those of you that maybe don't have them, or they're not defined at all, or, Walt, I just call it when it says commitment, willingness to exert personal effort, right? If maybe that's not clear enough for some reason, all right, and it's not whatever, can we at least sit down with our team and help them understand and work together to develop, how do we want to function together? How should we be treating each other? Here's what I found happens almost every time is an overwhelming majority of the employees will start to say what we want is the opposite things of all the drama we just talked about. So they may not say, hey, I want the gossip to stop. They're going to say, what I would love to have is that we all were willing to come directly to the person we had a concern with and talk to them directly. We're going to come up with those positive behaviors that we want to see, and can we work with our team to set those up front and reach agreement? And again, I'm looking at 3, 4, 5 values at the most, with maybe 3, 4, or 5 behaviors under each one, enough to give us examples. They're not rules. In other words, we're not going to try to capture every possible behavior, but we're going to give a picture that says this is what we need to follow. And so when I sit in a meeting and go, right, that I can say, Jim, when you roll your eyes, suck your teeth, and make that noise when you're frustrated, how is that consistent with our values? And if Jim says, well, it is. Well, Jim, here's our values that we've all agreed to. Show me on there the different behaviors that support that that's okay. And as you can imagine, we're not going to be able to find that. So then we get to look and say, so let's talk about the values of the behaviors we want to see, so we stop doing that. I hope that kind of makes sense. And that's a very proactive way to deal with this high drama stuff. Now, on the other side of the coin, if it happens, what do? Well, we've talked about this in other conversations, and we will probably talk this in many of our conversations, because this is a fundamental issue, is how do we hold people accountable? Well, one, again, we have to be proactive and set clear expectations, and we just kind of spent a few minutes talking about that. 2, then we have to be willing to do the hard work. And we have to understand that I'm the supervisor, manager, or leader, and I don't need to defend that or somehow justify that. Have you ever, I don't know how many of your parents, or you found yourself in a situation where it's like, well, I'm your father, right? Or I'm the boss. You might say that at work. When we get into that place, what I would suggest is we're already in trouble, right? We no longer know what to do or how to deal with whatever situation is in front of us. And what I like to tell supervisors, leaders, and managers is, you are a supervisor, you are a manager, you are a leader. That's just a given. You don't ever need to say that you are. If you find you're in a position where you have to say it, then you've not done something prior to that. You've not been clear about expectations. So, for example, again, roll my eyes and suck my teeth. I get to say, Jim, I noticed in today's meeting, and I do this privately, right? I'm calm, professional, and respectful, but firm. I noticed that in our meeting today that you rolled your eyes and you sucked your teeth. Well, I didn't do that. Well, Jim, you got to help me understand that, because I watched you do it. So when you say you didn't do it, help me understand that disconnect. Right? So we need to pursue the issue relentlessly with them. And we need to help them to understand why that behavior is not okay. So one of the processes we go through, one, is we have to stop the behaviors. So we can even kind of follow these steps real quick, and then that'll probably take us to almost our end here. One, we stop the behavior. All right, so I get to talk to Jim, say, Jim, you need to stop rolling your eyes and sucking your teeth and giving that expression that you're frustrated like that. I need to explain what the behavior is, which I just did. I need to explain why it's not okay. Jim, it's unproductive. It doesn't help us understand what you're doing or where you're at, other than you're kind of checking out. But do you have ideas? And then we need to talk about what would we like them to do. Depending on the individual and the circumstances, that can vary a little bit. But let me just, as this example, I might say, so Jim, in the future, and by the way, when I'm doing this process with folks, I'm asking them to do that. So I might even say, so Jim, now that we've kind of talked through that behavior and how it's not helpful, what do you think you could do instead? But I need to be prepared with some ideas. So as we're talking about it, we may realize, okay, well, if I'm frustrated, I need to actually speak up and say, you know what, I'm frustrated with. Okay. Now, again, that may not always be the best solution, especially if we've got somebody to know they're incredibly vocal, right? In fact, they go overboard. They're always telling, the one, somebody gave an example, I call it, they don't have any filters, right? So we may talk about the example of Jim. Maybe one of the strategies we need to do is when you're frustrated, you pause and say nothing. And you listen. And maybe you ask a question before you make a statement. Or you wait until the meeting's over, then come see me and we'll talk through it. So whatever it really depends on the person. We find what we'd like to see their behavior to be. And then we talk about why that behavior is the right one, right? So again, let me go through those 4 real quick, and then there's a couple more. We stop the behavior and describe what it is we want them not to do anymore and why, the rationale of why that behavior is not going to work. We talk about what behavior do we want to see from them, and we talk about why, the rationale of why that behavior is the one we want to see. And then once we've done that, then we want to check for understanding. And one of the things we often do for check for understanding is this. Well, Jim, do you understand? And I'm going to pretty much tell you, and you probably experienced this, right? The overwhelming answer when we ask, do you understand, is what? Yes, right? Because they don't want to have the conversation anymore. They want to be done. So it's like, if I say yes, are we done? And as a supervisor manager, I don't like this conversation. So if they say yes, I'm like, good, we can walk away. I'm going to suggest that we stop doing that. That we look and say, maybe I have to ask them to demonstrate a behavior for me, or maybe, Jim, do this. Before we wrap up, just kind of walk me through again. So what is going to be the behaviors that we're going to see going forward? What's the plan of how you're going to kind of change and get on track with where we want you to be? And then Jim's going to explain that, and that's going to give us a sense, do they understand it? It also sets us up for any future situations that it's no longer just me, but Jim and I, we reached agreement. He even shared it. So now I know he gets it. I know he can do it because he did it. The final step then is that we check in and assess and evaluate, are we making progress? The kind of the final point, one of the, I think, errors we make when we get into this notion of dealing with this high drama, these difficult behaviors, is that, one, we may just ignore it altogether and just completely get frustrated until I blow a gasket, right? And then we become part of the problem. Or 2, if I do address it, then it's so uncomfortable and awkward that I end up avoiding them. Like for the next few days, we just kind of tiptoe around. And I'm going to suggest you do the exact opposite. Within the same day of when you addressed it, circle back around to them and simply ask, hey, Jim, I know we had kind of a tough conversation earlier today. Just wanted to see how you're doing, just checking in and make sure we're good and everything's okay. If you have any questions or anything to follow up with. That's it. And Jim may say, no, I got it. I'm good. Okay. Hey, I appreciate that. As always, we'll stay in touch. We'll check in periodically. I don't want to run from it. I want to stay fully engaged, because the bottom line, folks, as a supervisor, I didn't do anything wrong. Jim did. The employee did. And so I don't need to run around afraid or trying to hide. I don't need to defend myself. They're the ones that need to change their behavior. So let me stop there. I know we're closing in end of our time. And Christine, I agree. We could spend a long time talking about this, practicing this. One of the things that will help us with these behaviors is to not get yourself in a position where you're defending yourself. If I had some of you sitting here, we could actually have a conversation. And it's very simple, so I would say, talk to me about this behavior of, I'm whining or complaining. What do we do, right? And as soon as you say, hey, Jim, I want to talk to you about your complaining and how that, and I go, oh, what, you don't like me? What did I do? How come you're out to get me? How come Danielle gets to do it and I don't? And Walt gets away. He did it the other day. And then we as supervisors start down that rabbit trail of defending. No, it's not that. And I'm like, stop. That's crazy. All it does is ends up in confusion. Everything gets convoluted. You talk for a half an hour and you have no idea where you're at or what you've talked about, but you're completely frustrated. What I'm just going to suggest is you don't need to defend yourself. If someone looks at me and says, oh, so you don't like me and so you're picking on me, I don't even actually address that. I say, I understand that you're concerned about those things. I want to really look at your behavior and how we're going to adjust that. We're going to stay focus like a laser on the behavior that we want to see or that we want them to change. So fundamentally, when it comes to this, the gossips, the tattletales, the whiners, the complainers, we have got to gain the confidence to be able to look at them and say, stop it. And I'm going to suggest to you, it's actually okay to say, stop it. You're complaining. It seems like more often than not, the conversations you're involved in, you're upset about something, you find the negative and you're complaining, and that needs to stop. Again, in that discussion, I think we ought to invest in them and find out what's going on. Why are you unhappy? I think those are reasonable discussions to have. At the same time, to leave with the expectation it stops. And then what is the behavior we want to see? I think a big part of it too is as part of those steps I was going through, I love to ask employees this question when we're getting close to being done. So Jim, I'm going to trust and hope that we don't see this behavior anymore. That's the expectation. I understand it's hard to change. So let's just have a brief discussion. If that behavior appears again, how should we handle it? What should we do? And I want them to wrestle with that. I want them to struggle with it. And they may even say, I don't know. Say, okay, well, when you say I don't know, what does that mean? Because does that just mean you don't want to even try to think about it? You don't care? Or you just need time to think about it? And then it may be, okay, well, let's do this. Let's take the rest of the day and tonight, and then tomorrow we'll come back together and you can share some of your thoughts on that. So let me stop there. Again, thank you all very much for being here today. I encourage you to, like us on our social media, go to our YouTube page and watch the short videos we have. We're up to, I think, 30 or so videos now there for you, all free. Go to our website. Danielle's going to put a link up here. You'll see it in a minute. That I encourage any of you that were interested in any of your leaders, supervisors, managers in your organization. We've developed a free online assessment. You can go to our website. You can see it right there. Danielle just put the link. You can check that out. Take it. It'll take you probably 5 minutes or less. You'll get a very simple little kind of report back, very simple and brief, but enough to kind of get you thinking about some of the things that I think can help us deal with these issues. As always, as we wrap up here, if anybody has any questions, please type them in. I'll try to deal with those. You can hit the little hand and you can talk and we'll stick around. But other than that, I appreciate all of you today. Any questions, go ahead and type them in. And if you don't have any questions or if you want to stick around and hear us talk for a couple minutes about people's questions, you can do that. Other than that, I hope to see you next month at the webinar. Stay in touch with us through our Facebook page, through LinkedIn. Ask your questions, share your comments. We have a blog that we post every month on our website that you can react to that may be helpful. Again, our videos. We have a number of book reviews out on our website that you may find some of those books helpful with these discussions for additional learning. And as always, feel free just to reach out directly through email or telephone, give us a call, and we'd love to talk to you one-on-one and see what we can do to support you and help you. Other than that, Christine, you're welcome. Thanks for being here today, everybody. Again, I'll stick around for another 5 to 10 minutes here if you've got questions. Other than that, have a great rest of the day and be safe today. Take care.